Good morning. I'm going to give people a few minutes to just filter on here and we will get started. Well, happy Friday. Thank you for joining us for our weekly tariff and trade briefing. I'm Liz Radley. I'm the Marketing and Communications Director here at World Trade Center, Utah, and I'll be facilitating today's conversation. We've learned from our analytics that most of our participants are repeat viewers, so thanks for coming back. But if you happen to be new, this is a weekly series, and we provide you with the latest information on trade and tariffs, and then also try to sprinkle in a little bit of additional color to help you alleviate some of the difficulties that are coming with these tariffs. And we've got a great presenter today with Wayne Coleman talking about the foreign trade zone. Um, we always update our live trade and tariff dashboard on the World Trade Center Utah website. So if you're looking for the most up-to-date information, you can click on that link. We'll put it in the chat for you, and we try to keep that as up-to-date as possible. And before we turn it over to Wayne about the foreign trade zone, we have Troy Keller here. Troy is our international trade and commercial policy advisor at World Trade Center, Utah, and he is going to give us an update on what has happened this week in tariffs. So I'll pass it over to you, Troy.
Liz, thanks a bunch. Good to be with everyone today. And so, yeah, another interesting week. We're going to rattle through some of these updates, and as Liz said, they're also on the dashboard. Um, some of the themes persist, as we've talked about in the past. We went from early days of Liberation Day type blanket tariffs to then seeing deal making happening pretty quickly with individual nations, and some with sectors like industrial sectors, but though that wasn't as obvious, it's plainly obvious where we are today that a lot of the changes, a lot of either additional tariffs or some of the I won't use the word exemption, but sort of benefits or tariff help are going to sectors that clearly are striking some type of arrangement or exerting some messaging and influence with the administration. So we continue to see deal making, and I think it'll continue to evolve as we go through it. That seems to be the primary action now, with some caveats given potential litigation on the new 301 tariffs, which we'll touch on here in a minute. So the first big one is that just well, you'll remember on April 2nd, back in April, the administration overhauled the Section 232 like metals regime on steel, aluminum, and copper, and in that they kind of tiered things a little bit. So it was a 50% rate on products made entirely or almost entirely of those metals, 25% on the downstream derivative products, with sort of the trade-off on that being that, so in some cases you'd have lower tariffs, but the trade-off being that the full value of the product would now be tariffed rather than just the metals component, which I think was what people were doing and was working before. And so that was the big change in April. But another thing that was part of it was that they made clear that as process wise, they continue to add specific products to the list there, products made from, or largely or have significant components of steel, aluminum, and copper. So that's what happened yesterday. They came up with an additional kind of 15 categories, and some of those are they've just got a list here: brass musical instruments, floor safes, fire extinguishers. So some of that's probably not. It might be core to some of you, but less likely. But then you get into things like trailers, welding machine parts, propane and oxygen cylinders. So and they're in trailers for ag products. So some things that a lot of semi trailers that a lot of companies, if they don't finish or manufacture them, they certainly use them. So there's impacts into the supply chain from those. Again, the only sort of common denominator to those is that you can see industries in the U.S. saying, hey, we could use some help on price protection on these, and so that clearly led to these new categories being added. Um, and so I think that one quick takeaway for us on this call, which we've said many times before, but in particular now, if you have products that are mostly metal by weight and you're importing those, then prepare. There's a reasonable, very good chance that eventually they'll be added to this same list, and you'll have some tariff impact from that. So if you feel like you've been kind of your supply chain has been somewhat fortunate on the 232 side, then just I'm not going to say just wait, but be watchful, right? Um, I will also note that there's a comment window on those 15 new additional categories that I just referred to, and so we have from between now and October and August 27th, so a few weeks to go ahead and put in an argument, and we always highly recommend that companies do. It's not as challenging or even expensive a project as you might think to do a comment letter to the USTR. Really, you can just explain your story and why, what the impact of these specific tariffs will have on you. And they do read them. They can, oftentimes they don't, but they can make a difference, even if just on the margin. They also preserve your ability later on if things get worse, or you ever find yourself sitting down and want to have sort of here are the things that have really bothered us. If you haven't sort of put your hand up before in the past when you're engaging with the government in the future, it does make it a little hard on your credibility. So definitely, we think it's not hard. Reach out. We can kind of guide you through, and point you to a lot of precedent for how to plug in a comment letter, whether on these or other. There's just constantly comment opportunities, given the cadence and regularity of the new tariff actions that we're always seeing. So again, another big one that happened really just late last night. The president signed another Section 232 proclamation. So this is kind of initiating tariffs on a whole category, a whole sector for the first time, and these are on polysilicon and its derivatives. So that's polysilicon. That's the raw material for solar panels and semiconductors. And the backstory here, you may or may not be aware of, but I actually wasn't aware of the significance of it. But you go back 20 years, and the U.S. produced half the world's polysilicon, that went into our own, manufacturing capability in those areas. Today, we're under 2%, and then China has over 90% of the global capacity. So we knew this was coming. An investigation was started about a year ago, and so we knew it was coming at some point. Here it is. There are a couple of remaining U.S. manufacturers. They will benefit from this. It will, of course, increase prices for many others, many on this call. But you can see the kind of storyline there. A little different and a unique thing about this one, which we hadn't yet seen, I don't believe, is this isn't just a tariff increase. It also establishes a minimum import prices on these products. So those products, to avoid like transshipment, where we saw, sort of Chinese manufacturing setting up facilities in other countries, maybe finishing in other countries to avoid some of these larger 301 tariffs. This one's transshipment proof. Doesn't matter where the materials come from; they'll have that minimum import price. So significant one. I'd look at the Wall Street Journal, et cetera, and kind of see what the commentary is, how this unfolds, and we'll do the same. And we can, always have that discussion with any of you who are particularly impacted and like to talk about whether there's something that can be done. Okay, another one, just a timing one. July 20, the president had signed proclamations, the first tariffs ever to be implemented under Section 338, and that was, on several categories and on products coming in from Canada. Pretty significant tariffs. Those sort of are not subject; those supersede USMCA. So those tariffs will apply to anything coming from Canada, like motor vehicles, dairy, alcoholic beverages. Those take effect here on August 19th. So here in just a few days. A few other smaller items now. The president used Section 201 to impose a 25% tariff on engineered court surfaces. So like countertops have some construction material. Pharmaceuticals, this goes the other way. There was a basically kind of a fulsome exemption on pharmaceuticals coming from the United Kingdom. So the tariff dropped from 10% to zero on those pharmaceuticals and ingredients that come through the UK. Then another, just on the litigation side, the attorneys general from 25 different states, and then also some companies. The attorneys general got together and filed suit on those most recent 301 tariffs. Those are the forced labor ones that applied to dozens of countries around the world. So those are the ones that, that's what litigation alleges. Those aren't really about forced labor, according to the litigation. They basically are just to replace the IEEPA tariffs, and there is certainly plenty of statements from the administration that make that point as well. So we'll see how that litigation unfolds. As a reminder, the 301 tariffs in the past there's been plenty of litigation on those, certainly from the Trump 1 days, and the courts have upheld them. This one, the fact pattern is a little different. So we'll see. I find it interesting that this one has even more. In the past, it's been companies that have sued, and of course, companies are doing the same this time. But this time we have all these attorneys general from mostly pretty much blue states. So you can see them. Seen. So there's and again kind of a political overlay to this as well. Very interesting. We'll see. I think this one is. I would not want to predict or bet on which way this one will go. I think it can go either way. All right, and then yeah, I think those are probably the main ones for today. So again, if people have questions or comments, you can put them in the chat bar or just reach out to us afterwards. So thanks everyone. Back to you, Liz.
Thanks, Troy. We keep thinking we're surely going to run out of things to say, but every week it seems like there's more and more. So we appreciate you staying on top of things and giving us that insight. And again, please check our tariff dashboard for all of this. If you want to submit a comment, the links are right there in the dashboard. Um, and again, we pretty much update that live, so it should have the most up-to-date and accurate information. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Wayne Coleman, and he's our administrator of the Foreign Trade Zone here at World Trade Center, Utah. Foreign Trade Zone is a great opportunity for importers to save some money and to expedite the process. So Wayne's going to tell us a little bit about that. And as always, if you have questions for Wayne or for Troy, you're welcome to put them in the chat or to reach out to us at World Trade Center. So I'll turn it over to you, Wayne.
Thanks, Liz, and thank you, Troy, for that succinct overview of the current situation. And as Liz pointed out, it tends to change rather rapidly. So it's good to have people like Troy on top of the situation. My name is Wayne Coleman. I work as the Foreign Trade Zone Administrator for FTZ 30 at WTC Utah. My company is C3 Associates. I've been involved in the Foreign Trade Zone world for about 15 years, exclusively working with grantees like World Trade Center Utah, working with individual companies to help them apply and activate as foreign trade zones, and the associated governmental affairs work that's associated with all of that. So thank you for participating today, and hopefully you'll come away with a little bit better understanding of the FTZ program. And after hearing Troy, perhaps you could connect the dots on that. I'll touch on that a little bit in my presentation from the standpoint of how FTZs can help you mitigate some of those tariffs. So with that being said, Andrea, there you go. That's our cute little title slide. Okay, so how foreign trade zones can mitigate Trump tariffs. 2.0, go back to that because I want to point something out that Troy did. Thank you. The 232 and the 301s are still there. The IEPAs are gone. We all heard the Supreme Court eliminated that and replaced them. The administration did with the 122s, which went away because they were a temporary measure. I believe it was July 19th or 23rd they went away. And they've subsequently reinforced the 301 tariffs and the 232 tariffs so that they've made up for whatever loss in revenue from the IEPA tariffs, and a few more executive orders have been slung out into the trade environment. So, all right, next slide, please. Thanks. So, what is a foreign trade zone? It's a U.S. area. It could be your facility, your warehouse, your manufacturing plant that is designated as a secure area outside the customs territory of the United States. And what that means is you would apply to the Foreign Trade Zones Board. They would approve your request to be a foreign trade zone. And there's really no reason why you wouldn't be approved. There are some very specific things that you cannot do in a foreign trade zone. Like you cannot distill spirits, you cannot make watches, and a few other oddly specific things like that. Um, I've yet only one time in my 15 years have I come across a company that was trying to do something related to watches, and we had to skirt around that issue to get them approved. So for the most part, you will be approved. Then you activate your foreign trade zone, and that is the area that you determine the activity is going to take place in. So the designation of a foreign trade zone user goes to the company. It's not necessarily the facility. You pick the facility, and then CBP determines whether if it's a secure enough facility for you to admit goods into that facility, and they're not going to go anywhere because you're going to be the custodian of those goods. Because remember, they haven't entered the commerce of the United States. And so, what does that do for you? It allows you to enter items that you've imported and would typically enter and pay duties at a port into your facility. And since they're not yet entered, there's no duty triggering event, which is the entry. So you've admitted them into the zone. Those duties are only paid if those goods leave the foreign trade zone and go into the commerce of the United States. If your clients or customers are in other parts of the world outside of the United States, you can import goods, admit them into your foreign trade zone, and many warehousing and distribution companies do this, and then they distribute from the central location to other countries. You never enter the United States, so there's no duty paid. So there's a great potential to save duty. And it's also an ideal situation for storage, assembly, and manufacturing where foreign components are used. Next, please. So, what is a foreign trade zone? What can we do in there? We can store, assemble, process, or export goods. Duties are only paid when you enter the U.S. market, and no duty on exported or destroyed goods. And the part of destroyed goods is important. If you're in manufacturing and you regularly have scrap, which most manufacturing does, rarely do you, especially in machining or fabricating, do you use all of the material. So whatever is left over from the manufacturing process, you can destroy it in the zone and get rid of it and not have to pay duty on that. That can present significant savings to manufacturers as well. Next, please. There's duty deferral, duty elimination, and inverted tariff. So we have duty deferral. So if I bring in a bunch of my product to sell over the course of a year, typically I would bring it in and I would have to have it on hand and I'd have to pay all that duty up front before it's released at the port and sent to my facility. With a foreign trade zone, you can bring that shipment to your facility and then you only pay duty as those individual items leave. So it creates a significant cash flow savings from the interest, the time value of money standpoint. And it also allows you to do one entry a week, and that's the weekly entry savings listed there. So typically you do an entry, it's domesticated, it comes to your facility. With a foreign trade zone, let's say you're getting 10 containers a week. Well, every one of those containers you have to do an entry, and every one of those containers you have to pay a merchandise processing fee. With a foreign trade zone weekly entry savings opportunity, all those goods come in, get admitted into the zone, and then once a week, you look back on the previous 7 days of what you've shipped out, you file one consolidated entry, and you pay one merchandise processing fee. The merchandise processing fee savings for high volume importers can be significant and sometimes more than the duty savings. So that's something to think about. The inverted tariff benefit, not so much these days, because one thing that the current administration did, and my personal opinion is I'm not sure they put a lot of thought into it because a lot of what they wanted to happen was the reshoring of manufacturing and for manufacturers in the United States to source materials from the US. So it used to be in a foreign trade zone, you could bring in materials and then use those materials in your manufacturing. And let's say you brought in 3 items that had 10% duty, but your finished product had no duty if you were to import it. So you take those 3 items, incorporate them into your manufacturing process, and then when that finished product leaves and enters the commerce of the United States, there's no duty paid. Well, there is an executive order which is temporarily restricting that activity, and it's hurting manufacturing. And there's a lot of effort underway from the private sector, from the state level, and others trying to get people like well, one of Utah's favorite sons, Jameson Greer, and others who are directly influential in this process to realize there needs to be a little bit of an exception there. But until that happens, the inverted tariff benefit is not on the table. And the logistics flexibility is such that typically when you import, you get to the port, you're in the queue to get entered. When your shipment arrives and it's going to a foreign trade zone, it doesn't get in that line. It bypasses that process. It comes straight to you. So if you're coming from the West Coast, that can mean a week to 2 weeks transit savings to your facility. Next, please. Okay, and this goes a little bit back to what Troy was talking about, and the various tariffs and how foreign trade zones can help them. Next. Next slide, please. Okay, so 232s. Those are all on steel and aluminum specifically. Okay, and so those are used in manufacturing, and you can get around the 232s in the same way other items because they're not dutied until they enter the U.S. Everything that you export using steel and aluminum in your manufacturing process, or the raw materials perhaps that you import and then export, avoid the tariff. So it's great for the aerospace sector, the automotive sector, and other industrial sectors that are reliant on steel and aluminum, and so much of it is um, under the 232 regimen. But the problem is, it's not just China. It's a lot of other countries. It's Brazil. It's a lot of Central American countries. So it doesn't affect those of us who do business specifically with China. It affects all of us who do business all around the world with steel and aluminum. Next, please. So 301s. These are the specific Chinese origin tariffs that you hear a lot about. And a lot of those are thrown out there under the guise of trying to restrict the fentanyl trade and other reasons that are chosen to just throw the tariff on them. And the same issues apply. To store or assemble 301s in FTZs, they're duty free. The final products may have a lower duty rate than the parts, but however, that, as I mentioned earlier, with the presidential executive order restricting that in foreign trade zones is still in effect. But if you export, you do avoid those 301 tariffs. So you could have tariffs that are affected, or excuse me, products that are affected by multiple tariffs, the standard tariff, a 301 tariff, and then some punitive tariff stacked on top of it, sometimes raising the cost of those materials to greater than the cost of the item itself. So if you're exporting them, it's a prime opportunity to save and mitigate those tariffs. Next, please. So the strategic benefits. So we can delay or avoid tariffs across multiple programs. Tariff engineering, which is where we look at what the tariffs might be, bring them into the foreign trade zone, and determine the best way to move forward to maximize our savings. It's very simple in customs compliance to do. And what's important is to evaluate your current tariff exposure, talk to FTZ experts, and here at WTC Utah, we're here to help you. We're here to look at your situation. We can do a cost benefit analysis for you at no charge and help you to make that decision whether or not the FTZ program is good for you. So if you're interested, please reach out at our email address below or call, and we would be more than happy to set up a meeting and discuss your unique situation. And thanks for listening.
Thank you, Wayne. Um, yeah, foreign trade zones certainly a very useful tool in your tool belt if you are importing a lot. And we have become subject matter experts on foreign trade zones. So please reach out if you have any questions or you're interested. We have a request to send the presentation to the group. Wayne, can we make this presentation available to the participants?
Yeah, I'll send a copy of this in PDF to you guys, and then you can distribute it.
Okay, perfect. No problem. Thank you, Jason. All right. With that, we are going to close. Thank you, everybody, for participating. If you have a specific topic, person, or company that you would like to hear from with regards to trade and tariffs on this weekly webinar, please reach out. We would love to have them on here. And again, just keep up with us on our dashboard, which is linked in the chat. And we will see you all next week.
Thanks, everybody. Y'all have a great holiday, or excuse me, weekend. Holiday was in the past.
Oh, and Liz, there is looks like Jacob just asked the question about the inland port down in St. George, if that's ever going to happen. And Wayne, I know that's something that's been discussed quite a bit. Do you want to just
Yeah,
comment on that before we drop
sure.
off?
Yeah, that's been a struggle. We're currently trying to get St. George's closer to the port of Las Vegas, but they're in a different CBP region. Currently, CBP Salt Lake City, which is in the San Francisco region, it's too far for them to go. Uh, Even though Las Vegas is closer, it's in the Los Angeles region, and they're not allowed to cross the state line when it's in a different region. So we're working to remedy that situation. It's been a slog to say the least.
Yeah, and Jacob, I'll just add the inland. Sorry, you asked about the inland port, I guess, and that and I see the article that you put there, and that will help on the logistics and infrastructure. But we really need to be able to have a foreign trade zone down there to make that all, come together. So I don't think it's going to happen in the next week or two, but don't give up hope. I think it's something that gets a lot of attention and talking about with the policymakers.
And of course, as soon as we close, all of the questions start coming in. So we do have about 3 minutes here. So there was a question. It says, to be clear, the entire customs clearance process is delayed until you decide to remove product from the foreign trade zone, right? Is that correct, Wayne?
Say that again. About half of what you said cut out. My apologies.
The entire customs clearance process is delayed until you decide to remove product from the FTZ.
Meaning the duty's deferred. Yes. As long as a product is in the FTZ and it can stay there indefinitely, there's no duty paid.
Perfect. Thank you.
It's like it's where it came from still.
It has not
Yeah,
entered the US market.
exactly.
Any other questions? I apologize for closing before all of those came rolling in. Okay, with that, we're going to end. We do have this recording as well as additional previous recordings of this webinar on our YouTube channel. So you can always refer back to this and see all of our other recordings from the past year and a half. And yep, reach out if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.